This tower has spent centuries falling, slowly, a little every year, and for a time, the world watched it, waiting for the day it would fall. Because this isn't just a story of a crooked tower, it's a story of a mistake that becomes legend, of a city that wanted to touch the sky and instead discovered the hard way that the sky wasn't the problem, it was the earth. Today you see it there, elegant, white, almost light. But the truth is that that shape wasn't planned. It wasn't born this way. It became this way. In the beginning, Pisa was a name that really mattered. A power, a living port, ships, merchants, wealth, and above all, pride. In the Middle Ages, Italian cities didn't compete only with coins and weapons. They competed with stones, with churches, with squares, with towers, because a building isn't just a building. It's a message, a challenge posed to time and to those who look at it. And at that precise point, in that square, Pisa decided to add a new element to the complex, a tall bell tower, visible from afar next to the cathedral, a real functional work, designed to dominate the space and complete the religious square. But before it became the perfect square we know today, that place was different. It wasn't a tidy garden. It was a large, sacred space, alive, full of movement. The cathedral was already there, enormous, luminous, a sign of power and faith. Not far away, the baptistry had just begun, still incomplete, another construction site, slowly growing. Around it, packed earth, materials, wheelbarrows, scaffolding, blocks of stone, men at work, not the calm of a postcard. A place that resounded with hammers, voices, and dust. And it was right there, in the midst of that religious heart under construction, that Pisa decided to raise its tower too, not for beauty, for identity. And so, in 1173, they laid the first stone. The tower was born as a bell tower. Not a toy, not a curiosity. The bell tower is the voice of the city, that which calls, that which warns, that which celebrates, a presence that must dominate space. The problem is that sometimes the ground is not earthly, a compromise, soft, unstable, deceptive, and if you place a giant on an overly optimistic foundation, nature doesn't. Argue, nature presents the bill. The most disturbing thing about this whole story is that the tower doesn't wait until it's finished before it leans. No, it starts almost immediately, while they're building it. Imagine the scene. The blocks rise, the walls grow, and then someone notices something. A line that's no longer straight. A strange sensation. One side that seems lower than the other. At first, perhaps you try to convince yourself that it's just an impression, that it's the light, that it's the eye, that it will pass. But it doesn't. And here's the first great paradox of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. The higher the tower rises, the more dangerous it becomes. And the more dangerous it becomes, the more important it becomes to finish it. Because leaving it half-finished would mean admitting to everyone that Pisa's failed. So, what do you do when your dream begins to fail? Do you abandon it or continue with it? Pisa continues, but with fear, with doubts, with attempts, with corrections. And the tower becomes a construction site that spans generations. You begin a project knowing that perhaps you'll never see the end. It's an almost tragic thought. You lay a stone, build a piece of the future, and you know that your name won't be the one engraved on the conclusion. You'll be just one hand among many. Meanwhile, life goes on. Politics changes. Periods of pause arrive. Wars, tensions, crises. And every pause is a double-edged sword, because stopping can save, but it can also condemn. The ground settles. The tower remains there, unfinished, with that visible wound. The slope, and yet, precisely those long pauses, that time that seems like a curse, perhaps become part of salvation, because the ground, slowly, stabilizes a little. Not enough to make the tower safe, but enough to allow man to try again. When they start again, in 1272, they can't pretend that nothing is happening. They have to live with the slope. And so they do something amazing. They try, to correct the direction as they build. They try to compensate, to rebalance, to bring it back with architecture. It's like walking on a moving boat and trying to build a house of cards. One wrong step and you lose everything. And yet, the tower continues to rise, slowly, painfully, and every additional meter is an act of human stubbornness, a figure of speech. We don't give up. And then, after almost 2 centuries from the beginning, comes a moment that none of the first builders would ever have seen. In 1372, the tower is completed. When it was finished, it wasn't perfect, already leaning, but whole, finally, with the bell tower. At the top, the pale arches, the stone still clean, as if it had just come from the hands of the masons. And then a strange thing happens. Instead of looking like a failure, it seems like a miracle, because it stands, and it stays standing. And meanwhile, gravity doesn't stop. The tower already leans. So every year the weight works in the same direction, and the more it leans, the harder it becomes to stop that push. For centuries, it remains like this, standing but under tension. And that's also why it becomes famous. Not just because of its beauty, but because it always seems on the verge of giving way. Yet it resists until the inclination grows enough that it's no longer a curiosity. It becomes a real problem. And then something that seems impossible happens. Man decides to save it. And we're not talking about centuries ago. We're talking about yesterday. In 1990, they closed it down because risk is no longer an idea, a number. And in the early 1990s, the real modern struggle begins, which lasts until 2001, a slow, surgical battle waged to save it without straightening it. But saving it is a difficult verb here, because you can't save it by making it normal. If you straighten it completely, you kill what makes it unique. If you do nothing, you risk losing it. So you have to do the most delicate thing there is. You have to cure it without changing its face. And a very modern struggle begins, made up of engineers with nerves on edge and instruments pointed at the tower day and night, sensors that measure every millimeter, like an electrocardiogram, control cracks, monitored inclination, recorded vibrations. Because here you're not restoring. You're trying to stop a slow, almost invisible, but continuous movement. And the scene is truly absurd. You're not supporting just any building. You're supporting a legend. They tried different approaches. Some brilliant, others disastrous. In some periods, they add weights to the base, as if trying to pull it back with the force of its mass. In others, they try to work on the earth. They remove small amounts of soil from one side, millimeter by millimeter, to make it retract slowly without jerks. And then there are the attempts that are scary just to think about overly aggressive interventions, which instead of stabilizing, increase the risk. Because with a structure like this, it takes little to change everything. And while the experts work, life outside continues as usual. Tourists arriving, photos, laughter, that gesture everyone makes, the hand holding up the tower. It's an almost comical scene. Millions of people pretending to save the tower with a palm. And behind that game, the truth is that the tower was truly saved, not with one hand, but with decades of attention. And this is where history strikes in a strange way, because the Leaning Tower of Pisa becomes a symbol precisely because of its flaw. We live in a world where everything must seem perfect, where if something starts out wrong, you hide it, you fix it, you throw it away. And yet Pisa became eternal precisely because it didn't hide its mistake. It faced it, it carried it to the top, and then it protected it. And as it hangs motionless, as if suspended, it seems to be saying something simple. You don't have to be perfect to become eternal. You have to stay standing, even when everything pushes you to fall. If you like stories where the past seems impossible, sign up, because sometimes wonder is born precisely where something goes wrong.